The slums of Trassen Station were not meant for the living, they were meant for trash. Rust and the forgotten old Jacob walked those narrow paths every day. Pushing his small hover cart full of scrap, he wore a thick brown coat stained with oil and dust. No one looked at him, and he didn't care. He liked the silence, the broken things, the old machines no one wanted anymore. But that day, something changed as he passed a rusted garbage vent near the old reactor ducts. He heard a sound, not metal falling, not steam hissing. It was a small, shaking breath, like a scared animal trying not to be heard. He stopped, listened. The noise came again, softer now, like someone holding back tears. Jacob turned toward the sound. His boots crunching old wire, he bent down and slowly moved aside a sheet of bent metal. His tired eyes met something glowing, too wide. Bright eyes stared back at him from the shadows. They were not human, not even close, big, shiny, and full of fear. A little alien girl crouched there, no older than 5. Her skin was pale gray, her face thin and covered in smudges. Her arms hugged her knees tightly, and her ribs showed through her skin like broken sticks. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out, only silence. She looked like a ghost, like she hadn't eaten in days, maybe weeks. Jacob didn't speak right away. He had seen it during war, during famine, during loss. He reached into his coat slowly and pulled out a small food bar. Unwrapping it halfway, he placed it gently on the ground and stepped back. The girl didn't move at first, but after a few seconds, she sniffed the air once, then twice. Her tiny fingers reached out, snatched the food and pulled it close. She bit into it like a starving animal, eyes darting around like someone might take it. Jacob didn't move. He just watched. Every day after that, Jacob came back. Always. At the same time, always with food. Sometimes it was a piece of bread. Other times, an old can of soup he'd warmed. She never spoke, never came out. But she was always there, always watching from the shadows. The other scrap workers started whispering. They said Jacob was wasting his time. They said the alien girl was dangerous, that she belonged to a species the labs rejected and fit for society. Let her die, one said, better that way. Jacob said nothing, but inside, something old and warm burned against something he thought he'd lost. One rainy evening, Jacob brought an old blanket. It was patched and torn, but warm. He placed it near the vent with the food and turned to go. But a small voice stopped him. Wait. Jacob froze. It was the first time she spoke. He turned slowly, his eyes soft. The girl had crawled out from her hiding place, clutching the blanket. She stood there barefoot on the metal floor, shaking, her voice barely more than a whisper. Name. Riva, she said. Then her knees gave out and she fell forward. Jacob rushed to catch her. She was so light, it felt like lifting a feather. Her body was burning with fever, her skin too cold. He looked at her face, her cheeks wet from silent tears. She had trusted him, and now she was slipping, without thinking. Jacob wrapped her in the blanket and lifted her in his arms. He didn't care who saw. He didn't care about laws, patrols, or rumors. This was a child, and children deserved better than death behind garbage vents. He carried her through the slums, across old bridges and broken streets, till he reached the edge of the junkyard where his small cabin stood. He opened the door, kicked it closed, and laid her gently on his cot. Hang on, little one, he whispered. You're safe now. Outside, the wind howled through the metal skeletons of the station, but inside that tiny cabin, a new story had begun. Not about trash, not about war, but about a human who saw hope in a broken alien girl, and hope is hard to kill. Riva woke up to the scent of warm broth and soft light coming through an old metal window. Her small body shivered beneath the blanket, but for the first time in many days, she didn't feel afraid. The room was small only. One bed, some shelves full of scrap, a rusted heater humming in the corner. The old man sat on a stool nearby, peeling a strange red fruit with a knife so dull it barely worked. When he noticed her open eyes, he gave a slow, gentle nod. Morning. He said softly, I'm Jacob. Riva didn't reply. She sat up quickly, arms tight around her knees again, her wide alien eyes watching him carefully. The last time she let someone get close, her whole world had burned, but Jacob made no move toward her. He just slid a bowl of soup across the small table and stood up. "You don't have to talk," he said. "Just eat." The smell was too much. Her stomach growled like a wild animal. She crawled across the bed, reached for the bowl, and began sipping slowly. It burned her mouth a little, but she didn't care. It was real food, warm food, not something stolen or spoiled from a waste pile. For 2 days, they said nothing. Jacob worked outside during the day, sorting junk and fixing broken engines. Riva stayed inside, watching him through the cracked window. He didn't lock the door, didn't hide his tools. He left a small bag of food next to the bed every morning. On the 3rd day, she followed him out. Just a few steps, her bare feet crunching on gravel. He didn't look surprised, didn't scold, just handed her a small piece of metal and a wire. "Try twisting it like this," he said, showing her. With his weathered hands, she copied him, awkward at first, then again and again, till she got it right. A tiny light flicked on in her hands, and for the first time, she smiled. Jacob gave a small grunt and nodded. "Not bad," he said. "You've got smart fingers." That night, she spoke again. "Why help me?" She asked quietly, her voice unsure. Jacob didn't look up from his kettle. "'Cause no one else did," he said. "And I've seen what happens when no one helps." She didn't ask more. But she remembered those words every time she sat by the heater, or fixed a tool, or ate a full meal without fear. Jacob wasn't like the patrols who kicked her away. He wasn't like the scientists who poked her, or the traders who laughed and said, "Not worth a credit." He didn't even ask what she was. Not once. And that meant more than he knew. Later that week, while cleaning an old cabinet, Jacob found a dirty mirror and offered it to her. Riva took one look and dropped it. Her reflection scared her, her face too thin, her skin still bruised. And gray, her eyes too big, she looked like something from a nightmare. She turned away, ashamed, but Jacob picked up the mirror, wiped it clean, and set it down again. "You're not a monster," he said firmly. "You're just a kid who's been through hell." That night, Riva didn't sleep. She sat beside the heater, tracing patterns on the floor with her finger. She thought of her parents' memories, blurry and fading. She thought of the escape pod that dropped her into this cruel part of space. And then she thought of Jacob, an old human with nothing but rust and warmth, who gave both to her. From that day, she followed him everywhere. Into the junkyard, into the markets, into the scrap ships. She still didn't speak much, but she didn't hide anymore. And Jacob, he bought her boots, stitched from old leather. "And tire rubber, they'll keep your feet from freezing," he said, handing them over without ceremony. At the market, people stared. A few muttered cruel words. "Why bring that freak out here? Old fool's gone soft. She ain't even a real person." Riva gripped Jacob's coat tighter, her fingers trembling. But Jacob turned, faced them, and said loud enough for all to hear, "She's with me, and she's worth more than all your credits combined." They didn't say anything after that. They just turned away, pretending not to care. But Riva cared. In that moment, something heavy lifted from her chest, and in its place, something new started to grow. Something fragile, but real. It was the first time in her life she felt like she mattered. Riva was painting stars on the wall again, not with brushes, but with light dust she made by crushing old glowstones. Her small gray fingers moved slowly, carefully. Each dot and line formed a map of where she had come from, or maybe where she wanted to go. Jacob watched from the doorway, arms crossed. A soft smile under his rough beard. "Looks like a whole galaxy in here," he said. Riva nodded, not looking up. "It's the only one that doesn't hurt." Jacob didn't ask what that meant. He didn't have to. Pain had a sound, and it lived in her voice even when she smiled. The next morning, something was wrong. Jacob felt it in his bones, an old ache he hadn't felt since the war. His cabin door creaked under a sudden knock. Not a soft tap, but a heavy official bang. He opened it slowly, and 2 patrol officers stood there, one tall and pale, the other short with a cybernetic eye that clicked every few seconds. "Jacob Verne," the tall one said, reading from a slate. We've received reports of illegal harboring. Jacob didn't flinch. I don't deal in cargo. The cyborg officer stepped forward, sniffing the air like a dog. We're not talking about cargo, he said. We're talking about a Class Zeta bioform, Jacob. Play dumb, speak common. What's a Zeta? The officer held up a hologram. It was Riva, younger, barely recognizable but unmistakable. She looked sick. Trapped behind a glass wall, her eyes hollow. The caption read, Escaped Subject 317. Contained asset. Failed adaptation. Jacob's heart thudded slow and hard. I haven't seen her, he said flatly. Looks like another poor soul, chewed up by the labs. The officers scanned the cabin, first the air. Then the floors, then the walls. Riva was hidden under a hollow section of the floorboards. Curled up in complete silence, Jacob had trained her if danger came. Don't breathe, don't move, don't hope. Just wait. After several long minutes, the patrol gave up. Keep your eyes open, old man, the short one said. These things carry diseases and secrets, the tall one added. Anyone caught hiding her will be charged with harboring biological waste. Jacob didn't speak as they left. He didn't close the door right away either. He stood there, listening, waiting. Only when the sound of their boots faded did he kneel and knock twice on the floor. The panel slid open silently. Riva looked up, her face pale, her tiny body trembling. She didn't cry. She never did, but her hands gripped his arm like she was holding on to the world. I was good, she whispered. I didn't breathe. I know, kid, Jacob said, pulling her up. You did perfect that night, Jacob. Didn't sleep. He sat by the old heater, staring at the stars painted on the wall. He remembered wars fought in the dark of space. He remembered orders that labeled people as acceptable loss. He remembered faces like Riva's. Before they vanished, the next day he started making changes. He reinforced the walls of the cabin with scrap steel and heat shielding. He wired the floorboards with a pulse jammer. He dug a tunnel under the shed, just wide enough for one small body to crawl through. It led to an old escape pod, buried and forgotten under junk. I never planned to run again, Jacob muttered, but this time, I've got a reason. He taught Riva how to use the hatch, how to stay quiet, how to climb, how to press the button to lock the door behind her. It's only for emergencies. He said, if I say go, you go. Riva didn't argue. But her eyes held fear again, not of running, but of leaving him behind. Will you follow? She asked one night. Jacob hesitated, then knelt in front of her. I followed orders my whole life. He said, this time, I'll follow you. Later that week, a stranger came by the junkyard. He wasn't patrol. He wore a long coat with no badge, but Jacob saw the shape of a scanner under his sleeve. He asked about parts, old tech, data course questions that meant nothing, but felt loaded. Jacob answered carefully, never inviting him inside after the man left. Jacob burned the visitor's boot prints from the dirt. They're not just looking, he told Riva. They're hunting. She nodded, her voice flat. They want me back. Not happening, Jacob said. Tightening the seal on the escape pod, they'll have to take us both outside. The wind howled through the towers of rust and metal inside. A little girl wrapped herself in a patched blanket and stared at the glowing stars she'd made. And the old man sat with a weapon on his lap, ready to protect the only thing in the galaxy that mattered anymore. Jacob had seen many strange things. In his life, mutants, mercenaries, even moons breaking in half. But what Riva did next left him quiet for hours. It started with old wiring, broken lenses, and crushed crystal chips. She gathered them carefully without a word and began building something on the wall. At first, he thought it was just a child's distraction, something to pass time between meals and silence, but then he noticed patterns. Lines forming constellations, lights blinking in precise rhythms, symbols he didn't recognize repeating like code. Where'd you learn this? He finally asked, setting down his tools. Riva didn't look up. It's not learning, she said softly. It's remembering. Jacob's brow tightened. Remembering what? She pressed a glowing shard into the wall and stepped back. The entire cabin lit up for a moment in soft blue light. Shapes appeared floating in the air like misty holograms. Planets, paths, jump points. A star map, ancient and incomplete. I used to watch the stars from a tall tower, she whispered. Before the fire came, Jacob pulled up a crate and sat beside her. Listening, they said I was special, she continued, her hands twitching. Nervously, but then I failed their tests. They said my glow was wrong. My mind too quiet, so they locked me away, then forgot I existed. She pointed to a tiny mark on the map, far from any known space. That's home, she said. But not anymore. Jacob stared at the mark. It was in a dead zone uncharted. Unreachable unless you had exact coordinates. No one in their right mind flew there. Not even smugglers. But if what she was showing him was real, how did you get off-world? He asked gently. She closed her eyes. One of the nurses was kind. She hid me in a waste capsule before they could sell me. I woke up on Trayson and ran until I couldn't walk anymore. Jacob took a deep breath. He had spent his entire life dealing with machines, circuits, broken things. But here was something else, something ancient and delicate. A child with a mind full of stars, running from a past no one believed. That night, while Riva slept on the cot under her patchy blanket, Jacob stared at the glowing map. Her drawings had grown, spreading across the walls, each new line aligned with the next. Forming corridors of light and gravity, these weren't just memories. They were navigation routes, encrypted ones, too complex for standard eyes. He took pictures, ran them through his old scanner. The system beeped, then failed to match anything. These aren't stolen, he muttered. They're forgotten the next morning. Riva handed him a strange tool, 2 scrap rods wired together with a tiny blue crystal. It helps you see, she said. Jacob held it to his eye, and the wall came alive. The stars shifted, realigned, and at the center of it all was a blinking light, a signal, still active, still calling. Someone's still out there, he whispered, looking for you. Riva shook her head. No, she said. Looking for what I carry. She opened her palm, revealing a small shard glowing beneath her skin. It wasn't implanted. It was growing from her. Like a part of her body, its memory metal. She explained, it learns from me, and I learn from it. Jacob leaned back, speechless. The girl was more than a refugee. She was a living artifact. No wonder they hunted her. To some, she was a failure, but to others, she might be the key to lost knowledge, maybe even power. I can't let them take you, Jacob muttered. They'll tear you apart just to see what's inside. Riva looked up, eyes wide. But I don't want to run forever, she said. I want to find a place where my glow isn't wrong. Jacob looked at her map again. Then at the blinking signal, we'll find that place, he said, even if we have to build it from scratch. That night, he cleared the junk from under the cabin. He uncovered an old fusion cell, long buried under layers of metal and rot. Then he found it, what he'd hidden decades ago, a broken scout shuttle, tiny, damaged, but capable of short jumps. He brushed dust off the hull, his hands steady. Guess I'm flying again, he muttered. Didn't think I'd have a co-pilot this time, inside the cabin. Riva finished the last of her map. She looked at the stars. She painted her stars, her memories, and for the first time, she dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, one of them could be home. The wind over Trayson's scrap fields always howled, but that night went silent. No creaking metal, no groaning pipes, just a thick stillness. Like the world had stopped breathing. Jacob didn't sleep anymore. Not since the patrols came. Snooping, not since Riva painted stars that glowed with forgotten signals. Stood outside, hands wrapped around an old plasma rifle, eyes scanning the hills of rust. Riva was asleep in the crawlspace, curled beside a heating coil. Jacob had made her a soft cocoon out of scavenged fabric and insulation foam. She called it the nest, and it was the only place she ever smiled in her sleep. That smile would be tested tonight, because someone or something was coming. A sharp crunch of metal rang through the junkyard. Then silence again. Jacob crouched low, hiding behind a rusted ship wing. His eyes narrowed as he spotted a shadow move unnaturally fast between piles of junk. Too tall for a human, too silent for patrol, another shadow followed. Crawling sideways across a cargo hole like an insect, Jacob held his breath. He had seen movements like that before, war trackers. Bred for heat signatures and memory trails. Not machines, not beasts. Something in between. They weren't here by accident. They were here for her. Jacob tapped the trigger of his rifle 3 times, an old signal for Riva. If she was awake, she'd hear it and stay hidden. If not, he couldn't think about that. The first creature moved into the moonlight. Its armor shimmered black and blue, shaped like bone and shadow. Its face was smooth, no mouth, no eyes, only sensors and breathing tubes. It paused near the cabin. Sniffing the air like a predator, Jacob moved fast. He tossed a scrap of heated metal far across the field. It clanged loudly, drew the creature's head around. As it leaped toward the noise, Jacob sprinted to the cabin door. He slammed it shut behind him and locked the internal bolts. Riva woke instantly, eyes wide, sensing danger before words were spoken. "They're here," Jacob said, grabbing a power cell from the wall. 2 of them, maybe more. Riva climbed out of the nest, her hands glowing faintly with the same light from her wall maps. "I can hide deeper," she whispered. "I won't let them find me." Jacob looked at her and shook his head. "No," he said, "this time I fight back." He tossed her a small metal cube. "Take it to the tunnel and start the launch." "Cycle," she hesitated. "But you?" "I'll buy us time," he said with a hard smile. Like I used to do in the old wars, she vanished into the shadows. Her small feet light on the floor, Jacob turned and opened the hidden gun locker. He hadn't touched these weapons in years, old, worn, but still deadly like him. The first hunter slammed against the front wall hard enough to crack the outer plating. Jacob fired through the gap, hitting its shoulder with a blue pulse. The creature hissed, then responded with a plasma shot that scorched the doorframe. The second one broke through the back window. Jacob rolled to the side, grabbed a flash grenade, and threw it blind. A brilliant burst of light filled the room. The creature screamed, flailing. Jacob kicked it out the hole it came from, but he was getting tired faster than he wanted to admit. His breathing grew sharp, his aim a little slower. Down in the tunnel, Riva activated the escape pod systems. The lights flickered, screens buzzed. Coordinates. Home. She whispered, punching in the map patterns from memory. The pod roared to life, its engine humming softly beneath the layers of junk. Back in the cabin, Jacob stood bleeding, arm burned, back bruised, but both hunters were down, one twitching, one silent, and yet his legs gave out anyway. He hit the floor hard, the ceiling spinning above him. A small hand grabbed his getup, Riva said, her voice shaking but strong. "I activated the pod," she said. "We can go now, Jacob." Smiled weakly. "You were supposed to wait," he whispered. "I didn't," she said, pulling him up. "Because you didn't wait for me when I was dying in that vent." Together, they limped through the tunnel. Behind them, the cabin began to burn. One of the plasma shots had caught the old heater. Flames danced on the walls, covered in glowing. Stars like the sky itself was watching them escape. They climbed into the pod, Jacob slumping into the co-pilot seat. Riva strapped him in, her tiny hands fast but gentle. She sat beside him and whispered, "Let's go." The pod launched into the dark sky, silent as a ghost. Below, the hunters lay broken in the junk. Above, a trail of blue light cut through the night, and inside it, an old man and a girl carried the last map to a home no one believed existed. Asterisk, the escape pod floated through space. Silent and unseen behind them, Trazen Station faded into darkness, its ugly towers shrinking like distant scars ahead. Only stars, no coordinates, no safe harbor. No allies, just a child's memory and an old man's fading strength. Inside the pod, Jacob's breathing was slow and shallow. His arm was wrapped in a cloth soaked with medulla, but he was losing blood. Riva crouched beside him, fingers shaking as she tried to follow the emergency protocols. She had never flown anything, not really, only watched others do it through glass. But now, she had no choice. The stars on the control panel were unfamiliar to most, but not to her. Not to the girl who painted forgotten routes on junkyard walls. She tapped in the symbols she remembered, a swirl, then a dot, then a broken line, paths her ancestors once walked through the void. The ship's AI stuttered to life, its voice weak and outdated, coordinates invalid. Recalculating. Source origin not recognized. Riva frowned and pressed her palm to the glass. The shard embedded in her skin pulsed with light. Suddenly the screen changed. The ship accepted the coordinates almost as if it remembered. Her two, route locked, the AI said quietly. Jump in 3, 2. Jacob stirred as the jump began. He reached out and touched her hand. Where are we going, kid? He murmured, his voice barely more than air. Riva looked at him, eyes wet but glowing. Home, she whispered, or what's left of it. The jump ended with a soft hum instead of stars. The window filled with a swirling orange nebula. In the center floated a shattered moon and a ring of broken ships, and beyond that a planet, dark but not dead. It was quiet. Number signals, no patrols, just ruins and silence. Riva stared through the window, her lips trembling. Remember this sky, she said, even if it's broken. She landed the pod softly on a grassy cliffside just outside the ruins of an old city. The buildings were curved, grown from stone and crystal, not built like human ones. Vines covered everything, and glowing plants still bloomed under the pale sky. But there were no people, no voices, just the sound of the wind. Riva stepped out and walked ahead slowly, as if afraid the ground would vanish. She stopped at a cracked pillar, touching its surface. Symbols lit up under her hand, faint, like the memory of a lullaby. This was the Hall of Voices. She said, where we used to sing our dreams. Jacob leaned on her as he followed. Weaker now, his steps heavy, his vision fading, but he smiled anyway. It's beautiful, he whispered. Your world. They found shelter inside a half-collapsed tower. The AI inside the pod began scanning the atmosphere. It was safe. Barely, Jacob lay on a bed of moss. Looking up through a hole in the ceiling at the alien sky, Riva sat beside him, holding his hand tightly. I can find the beacon, she said, the one still calling. He nodded slowly. Good, they'll come, she said. Your people or mine? Maybe both, he whispered, if they still know how to listen. Tears fell down her cheeks as she whispered, I don't want to lose you now. You won't. He smiled. You carry me with every star you paint. She kissed his hand, and for the first time, she let herself cry, not from fear, not from pain, but from love. The next day she found it. A central pillar hidden in the heart of the ruins, still blinking with power. She activated the beacon using her shard, accepted her like an old friend. A signal launched into space. Silent to most ears, but not to the ones who remembered, across distant systems. Receivers lit up ancient ones buried in dust. A child of the forgotten race had returned, and she wasn't alone back in the shelter. Riva painted again, but this time, she didn't paint memories. She painted hope, new paths, new stars. The galaxy that didn't throw away those who were different. Beside her lay the coat Jacob once wore, now draped carefully over a polished stone. And on the wall above it, she drew two glowing lights, side by side, one blue, one gray, and in soft, wavy lines, she connected them with a golden thread. A soft wind passed through the ruins of the ancient city. It carried the scent of glowing moss, and the sound of water trickling from a cracked stone fountain. The planet had once been filled with songs and voices, now had one voice again. Riva stood atop a ledge near the beacon spire, her eyes on the sky. It had been 12 full turns since she activated the signal. Each night she watched the stars, waiting for the sign, and now. Tonight it came. A bright at appeared among the constellations, growing, moving, alive. Then another and another. Ships, not warships, not hunters, but explorers, diplomats. Seekers drawn by a call only the old codes could understand. Riva felt a warmth rise in her chest, not fear, but something close to joy. She turned and walked slowly down the spiral path carved into the cliffside. The old city had changed since she arrived. She had cleaned the buildings, grown new vines, planted seeds from Jacob's pocket. Now the place bloomed it like it used to, but like something new in the center of the ruins. A memorial stone stood beneath the shade of a tree that hadn't existed before. Riva had shaped it with her own hands, polished metal, painted with stars, and engraved with old human letters. Here lived the first human who saw me as a person, not a problem. Jacob Verne, my father, in all the ways that mattered, children of her kind ones, born in secret, hidden across the galaxy, had started arriving. They came in ones and twos, curious, scared. She welcomed them, just as Jacob had welcomed her. Taught them to build, to dream, to paint their own stars when the human ships landed. Many expected resistance, but instead, they were greeted with songs sung in a soft language of light and tone, and at the center of it all stood a once starving alien girl, now a leader, a symbol of what was thrown away. And what was saved? Ambassador Chiron of Earth stepped down. From his shuttle, he had read the reports, but nothing prepared him for the sight. Glowing city reborn, filled with children who looked like legends, and at the heart, Revitaller now, stronger. Eyes filled with fire and memory. You're the signal sender, he asked, unsure. She nodded, and the survivor. He looked at the rebuilt beacon tower, then back to her. We thought your kind was gone, said. Vanished in the wars they almost were, Riva answered, until someone gave me a blanket instead of a cage. Chiron nodded slowly. We don't deserve forgiveness. Maybe not, she said, but I didn't come for revenge. Why did you come? To give the galaxy a second chance. Over the next cycles, the city became more than a place, became a bridge between humans and her people. Between memory and the future, engineers helped repair what she preserved, scientists studied the ancient tech, but only with permission. Artists painted beside alien children, and stories were exchanged across firelight and friendship. Riva taught them all one simple rule. No one gets thrown away. Her father's coat still hung in her chamber, above a growing vine that shimmered blue. She often sat beside it at night, and when the wind whispered through the walls, she sometimes smiled, as if she could still hear his voice in the rustle of leaves. Years passed. The girl behind the garbage vents became a name known across systems. She never took a title, never claimed power. She only asked for stories, for laughter, for children to feel safe under strange skies. And whenever someone asked her where it all began, she would lead them to a wall deep inside the first tower, painted with shaky hands, still glowing even. After all this time, a star map, 2 lights connected by a golden thread. This, she would say, is where hope learned to crawl, and then learned how to fly.